to Montrose with fucking Morton or something. It just happened to fall around about the Christmas and New Year time, and you know, that seemed to have a big time for the Morton boys, you know. But they were part-time players, so I think the yards were shut at that time and everybody was on holiday, and you know, it was see how much you can drink over the Christmas and New Year. And we went to Montrose to play, and Jimmy Townsend and Sneddy and a few of the older guys had broke the curfew and pissed off into a place in Montrose and get badly drunk and come back in again at 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning, shimmied up the pipes to get in the room. Then he knew what was going on. And we were beaten. Montrose beat us 2-1 the following day, travelled back down the road again. And there was about half a dozen guys in that team that I'd never seen again. Yeah. On the Tuesday, they were gone. Sneddy eventually, he came back in again, Sneddy came back in, he was emigrating to Canada on the Thursday, so he must have got some fucking telling off. That moved on, and players like myself and Jim Holmes and a few others were coming in. There was a whole new regime coming in at Capel, and Benny was being able to pick that himself. And he was being able to pick the players that he wanted himself. All of a sudden, Hal had, I think, realised that, you know, that he couldn't do that anymore, and was quite happy to hand that out to Benny at that time. And we were bringing in new players. But that was about about December of that year. It would be suffice to say we're third bottom of the league and looking at relegation down into the old second division, first division. So.
But then, of course, your arrival, Andy, at Capel and subsequently coincided with some of the best seasons in the club's history.
Well, yeah, it seemed to happen so quick. I think that was what took everybody by surprise. Benny turned over the team very quickly, but he had bought wisely. He had brought players in who had basically something to try and achieve to. We had good players. I mean, I was fortunate enough to go in and play in the team at that time when Mark McGee was there. Mark had just come into the team as well. And Mark was a very good young footballer. But there was a lot of very good young footballers on that team. And basically what they were trying to do was to better themselves. And I think the piece, that's probably what provincial clubs should be all about. There was a lot of good young local players down here as well, you know. George Anderson, who had been in the Scotland squad in 1973, fantastic football player. And if George had been 2 or 3 inches bigger, George would have played in one of the top clubs down in England, and 2 ways round about that. Tommy Docherty had great faith in him and took him to the Scotland squad.
Who made George Anderson? Sunday.
Shut up! Shut up, you fucking idiot!
I thought you were talking to me there. George was young, Neil Orr was young, Joe McLaughlin was young, John McNeil. We signed 1 or 2 players that came in to complement him, a bit of experience. We brought Jimmy Miller, who was a local guy here for Greenup. We brought Jimmy back to Aberdeen. With, as I say, John Goldthorpe, with Jimmy Holmes. We had Davy Hayes, who seemed to be running about there forever. You know. So we had a good basis there, and a lot of good players who went on to do well in their career, Jim. You know, and that was the most important part of the whole thing. These guys weren't just good servants and good players for Morton. They were worth money to the club, and at that time, that's what it was all about. You brought your young players in, you gave them the opportunity, especially local players, to come in here and to play and to entertain and to do well at Morton. And then if the opportunity came for you to go and better yourself, you know, the people in Greenup understood that. They were able to talk in the years coming that you know, they saw Joe McLaughlin play before he captained Chelsea, they saw Neil Orr play before he went to West Ham, they saw Jim Chalmey before. They saw these guys and they played at Morton, they made a contribution. And it was a respected contribution to the supporters, and that was what was important.
Tell us, Andy, Jim and I live fairly locally, and sometimes we'll go out and share a sarsaparilla or whatever, and we talk about the old days and all the rascals in football we knew. I mean, how this fascinating character, Al Stewart, how high in the ladder of rascals was he?
Aye. He made Del Boy look like an apprentice.
Exactly.
I remember one day we went to Aberdeen to play Aberdeen in a league game. And where it was in midwinter, I always seem to be midwinter in Aberdeen as well. We travelled up by train. We always met at Queen Street Station. Hal met everybody, you know, it was a bit like it was a bit like a dog gathering the sheep together to get everybody through. And he always made sure the wee guy in the barriers at Queen Street opened up the barriers so we didn't need to go through the ticket inspection. You know, Morton Football Club, you know. And he'd walk through and he'd have tickets. And he'd only got half a dozen tickets. There was about 25 in the squad, the doc and everybody else that was here, and the physiotherapist. We all piled on the train, hung up to Morton Football Club. We went to Aberdeen. We beat Aberdeen 2-1, scored in the last 5 minutes of the game to get a result. We came back down again, we jumped on the train to travel home.
Stop.
And we got stuck. We got stuck at Castle Carey in the interchange, and we couldn't get across. And we were all in first class. And he didn't have tickets for first class. And the train was stuck there for 8 hours. Economy class had all the heating turned off. There was no bar or buffet facilities, there was nothing at all. The heating was on in first class and the buffet facilities were on the go, so we were all on the side. They had to send in helicopters with people who were taking unwell. Some of them had no injections for diabetes and what have you. And Hal fronted that right through with these 5 or 6 poxy economy tickets. And then they did cheap. We got there a 13-hour journey back to Aberdeen. And I saw him out at the ticket office at the end of it, all at Queen Street, fucking complaining about it. That's real class. The man was a guinea a box, man, a guinea a box.
Didn't at one point your wife have to take issue with Hal?
She did. I remember I think I was owed £100 expenses for driving up and down. Hal was always the same expenses. And he was very secretive. Nobody knew where we lived or what have you. Maybe that was part of the plan. A moving target was happening. And we tracked him down and we went to find him that night. And I'll never forget it. It was in Kinning Park, near Kinning Park Station. We found my wife. She was right up to the front door, banging the door. And opened up the door. It was like something like a Jeeves and Worcester. Like, he had this great big long dressing gown on with the cravat. My God, he nearly shit himself when he seen my missus. I'd been telling him for 3 days, she's coming. She's coming. We had a very good hour that night. And he eventually gave me a cheque for it from the cooperative bank. It was a personal private cheque. It took about 3 weeks to get it clear. The picture of Mickey Mouse on the front.
Two brief questions. The greatest day for Morton, your most shameful day?
The best day for Morton was, without a shadow of a doubt, when we won the first division title at Capello that night against the Airdrie. Nobody, because Dundee and Hearts, who were massive clubs as far as the first division were concerned at that time, and full-time clubs, and were able to splash money whenever they needed it, and had Scottish international players playing in their team, and had just come down for the Premier League at that time, or first division at that time. And they in everybody's book, you know, even Jim Black there writing for whoever he was writing for at that time must have thought that Hearts and Dundee would be the 2 teams to go up out of that division.
I certainly think it was Dundee being brought up a Dundee fan.
You would have been, man. You and Jim Spence, probably 2 Dundee supporters of the world. Everybody thought that would be the case. And just to do that at that time was a fantastic experience. That night, I'll never forget that night. It was a fantastic night. You know, we went the wee small hours and well by, but just to achieve that and to actually win the title. Not to go up to second place, as everybody says, oh, you maybe get there. Even with 6 or 8 games to go, people were still saying, Dundee and Hearts will still come away with that. They'll still go away. Morton, they'll not survive it. They're part-time players. They want to go to the Premier League. They'll never do it. They'll never be able to achieve that. You know, that was the biggest achievement. you know, in my time at Morton.
Thank you, Andy.
And the little bit the little black window that you maybe look and feel that shouldn't have been there.
There's plenty of them. I used to enjoy a night out, Brian. I know you're surprised to hear that. I remember really embarrassing the club and the supporters. It was my birthday, and we'd been celebrating down in Greenup with one or two of the boys, and we ended up in the back of the Morton Supporters Club, and there was a small soiree on in the place, and unfortunately myself and a couple of the committee members at that time had came to words there for certain circumstances, and quite rightly so. It was the worse for wear for alcohol that night, threw me out. And I remember the following day, the bang on my bedroom window, and it was two reporters, a photographer and a reporter from the Evening Times, and they run a story in the second page about it, you know, and I remember being deeply embarrassed about it. I was embarrassed because where it had happened within the supporters club. I was embarrassed because I was worse for wear and I shouldn't have been there like that, and I'd let people down. I'd let people down that supported me when I was playing and doing whatever, and I'd also let the club down because it was a bit of an embarrassment to them as well, you know.
Let that be a lesson to you, never trust a journalist.
Never trusted journalists. And I've been back in the supporter club since. Still the same shit place right now.
Tell us about the day that I think Aberdeen came calling, and Aberdeen are sitting there with a new manager, Ferguson, and you know they're beginning to fly at altitude. So they come down to Campbell and they get a doing. Was it in the cup? Was it?
Yeah, it was a cup game.
Was that Fergie attended your press conference or something?
We beat Aberdeen 2-1 in the league fortnight before that. Fergie wasn't happy about it. We'd scored late goals to come down the road beating them again. We went back up again about the week before that. We drew. Tell a lie, that was previously. Tell a lie. We came back down again a fortnight later to play them in the cup at Capel. And that was a season prior to Aberdeen going on to win the European Cup Winners' Cup. So they had a good side.
So
They fancied themselves
82.
82. And we played them at Capel. And we'd be surprised to say that I kept some of my better games for the Aberdeen games as well. In that cup game, I hadn't been playing particularly well. The previous game, I was in the process of being dropped if I hadn't scored a couple of goals against Dunfermline. I played against Hearts in the first round and hadn't played particularly well in the first game. Managed to play well in the replay. And Aberdeen came down and they hadn't had a great record down there, but they come down and we gave them a game that day. And I scored the goal that actually won the goal of the season that year. I don't think it possibly get down as one of my best ever games for Morton, but the cameras were there that day. The place was full. It was a right cup tie. Fergie had brought Aberdeen down for it and had been claiming that they would sort out the hoodoo that we had done before. And it didn't work out that way. But I'll never forget, it was before all these press conferences, before you journalist guys stick all these fancy machines down and all these big tape recorders and all that. And because of television were there, Arthur was there. You know, and top man Arthur. And we did an interview through the back, so they laid out the chairs in that wee tea room through the back. I don't know if any of these were there, you know, but 3 plastic chairs and a top table. It was at the press conference. And I got there early, filled as a line, and some of the journalists had asked us about the goal. It was a bit of a special goal. It wouldn't have been a bit of a special goal and not to win the goal of the season. But when you come off like that, you're not really sure. Well, half the time I hadn't sure what I'm doing on the park anyway. But I wasn't really sure how the goal had manifested itself at that time. And probably I was doing then, a wee bit what I'm doing now, I was bumbling my way through it. And I remember Fergie coming in and sitting down, and he listened to me for a couple of minutes, you know. And what happened, I caught it in my chest, and I think somebody came in, and Big Alec came in, and I talked inside him, and Wally Miller slid in, and I went, "Go to see you." And I thought, I put it through his legs. Give me a problem. And I thought, no, bend it down into the corner. Fergie just got And he just pushed the plastic sheet right back to the wall. He says, I'm fed up listening to this pish. He says, I'm away back to Aberdeen. And that was the first time I've ever sat close to him and been introduced to him. He says, I'm away back to Aberdeen. I'm not listening to any more of this.
Andy, clearly, Morton, there comes a point when your Morton career comes to an end. What were your thoughts at that time? I mean, what was going through your mind when the end came at Capel?
It hadn't been a great season. Morton, we were in the process of being relegated for the Premier League that year, and I'd only played double figures maybe in games. Started. It wasn't a great spell. The team were having a great spell, and I wasn't having a great spell. So, when I had signed a 4-year contract with them at Morton, you know, the only decent thing I did in the contract was I stipulated in it that it would have to be for Premier League football. When I'd signed that 4-year contract, I was in the third year at that time. I went back to the club again, and Hugh Curry at that time, who was the chairman, had spoke to us about staying on for another year, you know. But I'd felt I'd missed the boat a wee bit. I really should have been able to move and get myself a bigger club in a different set of circumstances within the first 2 or 3 years. I scored 130 goals in 3 seasons for Morton, all in the Premier League. And if that doesn't want to move, I don't know what to do. Well, there was guys like, you know, Raymond Stewart, you know, at Dundee United. He was full back, he was going for £500,000. I felt the club had asked for £1 million. Anybody that ever came to Morton was quoted £1 million because Hal quite rightly thought Dundee United could sell a full back who scores 1 goal in a lifetime. You know, we must get £1 million for somebody that scores 30 goals a season, which is, you know, logic. But at that time, you know, Jackie Charlton had offered £440,000 for me at Sheffield Wednesday. And Hal had knocked it back. 1 or 2 other clubs had been quiet. Brighton, who were a big club flying high at that moment in time, had sold a guy called Peter Ward, and Peter went for £500,000, and they wanted to transfer the money to Morton at that time. You know, right in the middle of the 3 years. So, I'd always felt that, you know, a move should have been the order of the day, and I had a family by that time, young kids at that time. It was maybe time for me to move, so I'd really missed the boat a wee bit. So when Morton were relegated out of the Premier League, I used the clause that I had in my contract to instigate, and I basically instigated it. I moved to Motherwell with Jock Wallace, which was fun in itself as well. Alec Miller had just been taken on, Benny Rooney had just been sacked, and Alec Miller had just been taken on. And Alex said, no, you're going to stay here next year and get us out of the first division. No, I says, Alec, you're sadly misinformed there. I says, I've got a deal sorted out to Motherwell to go to Motherwell. And the deal was held up for about 5 weeks. And I fell out with Hugh Curry, and I fell out with all the directors, Ian McPherson, and I fell out with Hal, and I fell out with everybody. And it wasn't until that day when Hal was driving me to Motherwell to go and sign, we got it all sorted out. And I asked him, I said, what was the problem? What would we draw this for 5 weeks for? Couldn't they sell you, he says. I said, how was that? He said, we're right in the process of selling the season tickets for next season, and if the punters know that you're not going to be there, they might go buy season tickets. So even right to the bitter end, the guy was still trying to stuff it right on me, you know. But if Morton had stayed in the Premier League, you know, I probably wouldn't have invoked that part of the contract at that time. I would have stayed on.
Was there a sense of regret, bitterness, Andy? You know, you've alluded to the fact that you really should have had a move to a top club, and clearly would have made yourself quite a bit of money in the process.
I suppose it is, yeah. I suppose when you look back in it, and hindsight's 20/20 vision when you look back in it, I don't have any bitterness towards the club. Maybe 1 or 2 individuals could have helped me. You know, they could have helped me a bit better. Benny could have helped me a bit better. You know, I always felt that, you know, he promised me these things would be available if I was able to turn in the performances that he thought I could turn in. And at the end of it, he stopped and he blocked 1 or 2 moves that would have been beneficial to me. Hal, I was a bit disappointed in, and Hal, I just felt like it was always shooting for the stars. Hal wanted to sell something at £1 million, and unfortunately, picked on me. He should have done it with nearly all and Joe McLaughlin, Jimmy told me, but he picked on me. You know, the people used to say, oh, Hal treats you like his long lost son. I said, I wish he fucking treated me like somebody that you like. They all get moves and I'm still sitting there. So I wouldn't go as far as to say I was bitter about the whole thing. I was probably disappointed. But towards the end of my spell at Morton as well, it would be suffice to say that a lot of that was my own doing as well, Jim. I had lost, somebody once described it to me as being the sort of eye of the tiger. I had lost a bit of that. My fitness was terrible, shocking. My behaviour was deplorable. My professionalism would always be seriously called into doubt. And, you know, I could still, I was only doing it in sporadic blasts at that time, you know. I wasn't getting the same role. I wasn't the same player, Jim. It would be suffice to say that. So it would be totally and completely unkind to the people at the club to say it was all their fault.
When you went to Motherwell, Jock Wallace was a very, very macho man who playfully would hit you in the guts when he saw you, you know, and put you at the door. How did he regard the man who could drink Guinness like water, etc.?
I had a good relationship with Big Jock. I think he took it on as being a personal crusade when I went to Motherwell, you know. Nobody can handle this guy. I'll be able to handle him, you know, the great jungle fighter. He wanted to see this through. So he told me that I wouldn't play in his team until I was fit enough to play. I managed to play in a League Cup game, funny enough, in Motherwell against Morton. It's close to play for a free kick, but won the game. And then I didn't play for a long time after that. So it was basically, I worked with a guy called Joe Work at that time to get myself back into some sort of shape again. I just got myself back into shape when I got a cartilage. I had to get my cartilage taken out. And that wasn't the way it is now, where you're in and out 20 minutes, you know. You go in, have the operation done, have a fag, and you're out the door with the NHS. This was a 6 week shot, you know, and then another 6 weeks to recover after it. And Big Jock went back to Ibrox in November, and the game previous, before he went back again, funny enough, was another game against Morton at Capello, which I played in again. And I was probably as fit there at Motherwell than I had been as a 16-year-old boy at Celtic Park. I was ready for the challenge again at Motherwell. I was ready for the challenge from Big Jock. And he had done a great job to get me fit again, and I appreciated it. He gave me another chance to do it, and he went back to Ibrox. And I'll never forget, I was standing at the front door at Motherwell. We came in to say cheerio to the boys before he went back for his second spell at Ibrox. He was in great form, and walking out the door, he came across and put his arm round about myself, and the goalkeeper, Nicky Walker, and he panicked me. He says, I'm going to take the 2 years to Ibrox with me. That's so he took Nicky back and forgot about me. I loved that spell. I mean, unfortunately, they brought in another manager, a guy called Bobby Watson, who was about as much use as a chocolate fire guard. And he came in and he hung about for about 6 weeks, but in the intervening time he had made it known to everybody that would listen to him. That wasn't many people, but it was one or two that I wouldn't be at Motherwell. And he made the decision for me to move on.
And he was right.
I don't know if he was right or not.
No, but I mean, you moved it on.
I moved on at that time.
Yeah.
He organised, the final straw in that one was that, you know, I'd only been there for the summertime. I'd got myself fit to come back in. He told me, I remember the first day he came to training, he said to me, "Now, Ritchie," I said, "Aye." He says, "You got a trade outside the game?" I went, "Something like that." I says, "No, I've been here, I've been in the game till I was 16. He went, "Oh, bother me." And about a week later, he came in and he said to me that I hadn't trained with the first team anywhere. I was a bad influence. He didn't like my personality around about the dressing room, and I had far too much to say for myself, which probably wasn't a million miles away from the truth.
So maybe point out at this point he was a holy willy as well.
He was a lay preacher. He was a lay preacher.
He didn't convert you, I take it.
He didn't convert me. If I didn't get my husband at the end, I'd have converted him right out.
You get 3 points for that.
He came in and he said to me that we were having a Christmas party, and you know, I have 2 sons, and at that time they were about maybe 7 and 5. And, you know, he was going to dress up as Santa Claus and would bring the kids over for the Christmas party. And I remember telling him, fuck yourself. Stick his Christmas presents where the sun never shines. And, you know, if I can't get a game in the team and he's not treating me like everybody else in the dressing room, why would I want to come out and want to enjoy the festive festivities with Bobby Watson dressed like Santa Claus? So needless to say, I didn't stay long about it more at that time.
Just coming up to interval very quickly, can you tell us about the final chapter? Albion Rovers, player manager, fascinating 6 games, 2 goals.
I went to Motherwell, then I left Motherwell. I found it extremely difficult to get a game of football, would you believe? And I was probably at my fittest. And we went through till about 4 weeks for the end of the season, and I met Benny Rooney again, would you believe, who was the manager at Albion Rovers. And they were short of football players at that time, and some of the boys had been injured, and my contract had been cancelled, so I could sign mid-season for anybody. And I ended up signing for Benny for the last 3 weeks of the season, and played on Thermo and Arbroath and Montrose. Funny enough, Montrose again. And I had scored 2 goals in one game, a goal and a goal in the other, so I had 4 goals in 3 games. Benny got the job and went back to Partick Thistle, and I was still hanging about, so the legend that is Tommy Fagan, you boys will know. Tommy offered me the job at Albion Rovers, you know, as player manager at the start of the season. I think we had about 6 players. You know, the budget was about 3 bangers and a balloon. And I was getting the balloon. And I was, what is it, actors say there were between jobs. I was resting at the time, so I really didn't have anything else, so I agreed to do that. And signed 1 or 2 players. I signed Bernie Slavin, who had played at Morton as a young player when I was down there. I signed Bernie and 1 or 2 other guys, and we started to go for season that way. But I remember going into Albion Rovers this day, and Tommy was there, and he was introducing to the rest of the directors and what a fucking motley crew they were. The dead and the dying. And he'd said, well, we'll go up to the office, and I went up to this office, and whoa, the place was rancid. You know, I looked around a bit, and I thought, oh God, what's this all about? And I walked in, and there was like, again, 2 plastic chairs and a table. There's this old guy, and he's writing around about the table, and he's opening drawers, and he's looking for things, and I'm looking at him. He says, hey, Andy Ritchie, and you play, aye, all right, sir. He says, all right. I says, I think this is my office, I think you're in my drawer. He says, no, he says, this is my office. He says, I'm the fucking handicapper at the Dugs. He says, you get a sign, chap, the door, I'll see you in a minute. And I knew there. I played 4 games and worked there for about 8 weeks. And after receiving a telling off from the legend that is Tommy Fagan, I came outside that day. It was a Saturday. We played East Fife. We'd won 1-0. We were hopeless and we got the result. But Tommy, the chairman, was complaining. And I resigned, come down the stairs, and there was an enormous big drum outside where they used to put the stuff that the dogs left behind after the racing. The lid on the tappet, and I lifted the lid up, and I took my boots, put them in there, put the lid down. I was 27 years of age. I had a family to keep, I had a mortgage to pay, I had all the rest of the stuff that went along with trying to do that. And I turned and I walked away, and I never went back.
Folks, I think on that point we'll close the first half of the show. Can I ask you if any of you have questions? You've been given cards when you came in. Anyone who has a question you'd like to ask Andy, if they can jot it down and also their name, we'd appreciate that. If you could have the questions back maybe in about 10 minutes time. And that closes the first half. Thank you very much. Thank you.
We'll never
into the second half of the crazy world of Andy Ritchie. Before we proceed, can I just thank one or two people who have helped make this evening possible. First and foremost, the Greenock Telegraph, in particular Roger Graham and Claire Amber Young, Inverclyde Radio, Hugh Piper, Sports Media Online, the unofficial Morton Supporters website, and Stephen McGinn. Thanks very much, folks.
Andy, Paul McCartney's long and winding road took you out of football boots in the bin, go to London, back's no clever. Tell us about what happened then.
I had a friend who was working in London at that time, and he had moved down about 18 months previous to that. At the time he suggested to me it might be more beneficial if I'd look outside the game to try and earn a living. As I've mentioned before, I had a young family on the go, and the opportunities weren't there. I was finding doors were being closed because of previous reputation, and that a new life might very well be the order of the day. I'd hurted my back a couple of seasons before that, and the time that I had out the game, it would be suffice to say that the recovery at Morton when I had back injury was a part-time recovery. You know, full-time physiotherapy wasn't available, and my back had deteriorated quite rapidly at that time. So it seemed like the right thing to do at that moment in time, Brian, was to take on board the opportunity of a good steady job in London. A very good job. I was working as the Assistant Secretary at the Barbican Centre in the City of London. I lived in the Barbican Centre, when anybody knows it was a lovely place. My kids had good schooling down there. Everything should have been good, but I think the fact that football was no longer in my life, it was only a matter of time before it reared its ugly head again.
Andy, you've now effectively, for the first time in your working life, you've entered the real world, if you like. I mean, that must have been a hell of a shock to the system.
Well, it meant a Friday night I could go for a drink without feeling guilty about it. And to the same as everybody else did. Yeah, it was. You know, it was novel in the fact that I'd never done anything like that before. It was a new life, a new place, new people, new sets of circumstances. It took me about a year working in that type of work, and I really enjoyed the work, enjoyed the people I worked for, they were good people. But there was never a Friday night that I went to bed that I didn't dream that I was going to be getting up on Saturday morning to go and play football. In fact, dreams being what they are, you know, I could possibly, if I hadn't known better, convince myself that I was getting up on Saturday morning to do that with the dreams that I've had previously. And I don't know whether it was due to medication or whatever in my bad back at that time, but I suffered, for the first time, one of the many panic attacks that I suffer still to this day. In respect of that became a reality that wasn't going to happen for me anymore. My footballing days were finished. I was 27 years of age, and I really felt in my heart of hearts, deep down in my soul, that I had much more to give. But my priorities had changed by that time. You know, I had to earn a living for the family out of football.
Is it, to this day, is it still it's Friday night, Saturday morning, still a thought that comes to you, all these years on?
Yeah, I still have the same dream. I still dream I'm chasing down the right at Capello trying to get the ball that's always that half yard in front of me, and I can't get it. You know, my big belly will stop me, but a lot of people in here would say that was just par for the course, that was a normal Saturday anyway. Or I'm arriving late in the box to finish the ball, and the ball just never seems to arrive at my foot to put in the net. I still have all them, Jim, you know. They never go away. People who finish the game either by choice or through injury, and I've met a lot of guys in similar positions who tell me that they have the same things as well. That never leaves you, you know. You've seen Billy McNeil earlier on. Billy McNeil spoke to me about 4 or 5 years ago, and Billy McNeil's a pensioner variety now, and he still is the same. He still thinks that he's going to march down that tunnel to lead Celtic out on the park on the Saturday when he's going to the game.
Take us into the world of panic attacks.
Well, I don't know if I'm medically qualified to do that or not, but well, I just totally and completely feel helpless to the whole thing. You know, I feel as if I'm going to die when I'm there. I have no reason for it.
How long do they last?
They last anything from 2 hours to 2 minutes. They're terrifying, they're frightening. They come on for no apparent reason. Nothing I seem to have gathered over those years will tell me why they happen.
Are you helpless at that time?
I feel helpless to the whole thing, yeah. But I believe deep down it's to do with the fact that I never really accepted for quite a number of years the fact that even when I was in 35, 36, I never believed that I would ever not come back and play football again, which was crazy in itself because I'd been out of the game almost 10 years. I always hoped that maybe one day, for the older folk within the audience, that it would be like Bewitched, like Samantha, I'd be able to twitch my nose and everything would go back to normal again. It would be back to when I was 24 and I'd get that chance again. And these things were just, I think they happened because of how I felt about the whole thing, and I knew I was helpless to it because football was very, very easy to me. It came easy to me. I never really had to work particularly hard at football, as I remember back in my career. Things happened for me and I was able to do that. Football was the easiest part of it. The rest of the football, the dedication, the professionalism, having to work hard and having to dedicate yourself totally and completely to the game was the bit that I found most difficult.
And are they sparked, Andy, by the reminiscing within yourself of what went wrong? Or did they just come on like that?
Yeah, well, I probably give myself the hardest time in a lot of that. They just come on. Well, a term, they're a medical condition, Brian, you know, that's the way it works. It's, you know, I now realise when they do come round about and they do happen to me that I'm not going to die, I'm not died yet. So, you know, that was because of my time that I spent down in London and the realisation that my football career was over. I believe that's what brought them on. There's other people I've spoken to over the years who suffered similar to this, and they felt likewise as well, that unfulfilled, unachieved situations have tended to bring them on with people as well. And I believe that was one of the main culprits as far as I was concerned.
Andy, you alluded to the fact that you had a lot of natural talent and gift in your football ability. I remember saying to Jim Baxter once, what made you such a great player? And Jim's answer typically to me was, didn't Ken said I could just do it. Was there an element of that with you where you could just do these things with the ball that you did? I know there was practice involved as well.
Yeah, there was. I found a natural ability to play the game the way I wanted. I was taught properly at the start with Willie Fernie when I went in. You know, Willie Fernie held great credence on the fact that if you couldn't control the ball, you couldn't play football. That was it. There was no black, white or grey areas.